Before COVID, I didn't really record much. I might record like little clips here and there.
Right.
But then after when COVID happened, nobody wanted to train their dog.
Right.
So then what happened then is I had to devise a way to show people I could train their dog without actually having to touch the dog. Because most training is they would train the dog in front of you, right?
Right.
When I used to do that. But then I also knew that I could train the dog without having to handle them.
Okay.
So then we started recording the lessons and then putting them up, and then people were like, oh, like they're social distancing or whatever, and then still able to train the dog, and Jesse doesn't have to touch the dog or whatever. So, and then it was just popular, so we just kept with it. So I was reading up on you guys, obedience essentially.
Yeah.
A little bit of a flighty dog.
Like that.
A little,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit of confidence, skittishness type of stuff. Yeah, it's mostly like in new environments and outside. We live in the city, so it's like a busy environment, a lot of stuff going on.
Are you guys in the South Loop or something like that?
We're in
West
West
Loop.
Loop,
West
like
Loop,
Fulton
okay.
Market area. So
Oh, yeah.
there's a lot going on there where it's like a lot of dogs, which he loves other dogs. And so he pulls towards dogs in a friendly way. He's extremely friendly,
Sure.
no aggression. We've never had, anything like that. But we got him at 6 months, or right when he turned 7 months. And so he came from a farm in Michigan with no noise, no nothing, no cars, no anything. So he loves other dogs and he's really friendly towards other people. He's a little shy towards new people, for sure. If anyone kind of puts his hand out, it's not like he's going to do anything. He's just not the golden retriever that's like, I'm going to jump on you or anything like that. But once he warms up, he's totally friendly, totally fine. It's just his confidence is a little low when it comes to new things.
Outside of dogs, like
other
all
dogs,
of that kind of goes
He
out
kind
the
of
window.
forgets about
Yes,
it.
yes, which is huge for us, but we still want to be able to obviously have him listen and not pull towards a dog like here where it's like aggressive, or if anything.
Just safer too in the city. Like we had a situation where like a Frenchie kind of came up to him.
Yeah, his little scar on his
you know,
nose.
and, like we didn't let him go up, but he wasn't like directly next to me, so a Frenchie kind of came up and was aggressive.
And just like bit his nose like right off the
Yeah,
bat.
so-
And he just kind of was like this. It didn't even affect his. He was
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it was fine, but it's just like the bigger point of keeping him safe in the city with a little bit more like we just kind of lose any type of like line of communication with him under in the house he's good.
Yeah.
Like we've been able to teach him like don't jump on this, like wait. He waits for his food. He listens to commands pretty like maybe 85-90% in the house, but outside it's much lower than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing I've not seen before. It's a very common thing too, getting a dog in a quiet environment, and then they come to busy, Chicago. My dogs are actually from South Texas.
Okay.
It's a very small town. It's like a 30-minute drive from one side of the town to the other. Very quiet. Very, when you walk, you see a person every 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And then we moved here, we're back here, and then my pit didn't poop and pee or poop for 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Because I was moving with my stepdad, he was in the South Loop.
Okay.
So we were in the thick of it, And then one day I woke up and I just see this anxiety in her face. I'm like, today's the day,
Yeah.
And then 3 days of poop came out.
Oh, wow.
And they've acclimated. They're fine now with the city. But some dogs, what's your dog's name?
Jarling.
Jarling. It's funny because we have a dog here named Darling.
Oh, really?
Yes.
We
It's a
always say
puppy.
darling with the J,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
people don't think, because when I say it, they think I'm saying Charlie.
Sure,
and
sure,
I'm
sure.
like, no, it's
Jarling.
Jarling.
Yeah.
See, like this, like
Yes.
the train, he's
He's made huge strides. Like before, he'd freak out a lot more. Now he kind of trusts us
Yes.
and comes towards us.
yeah, he
Which is the
comes,
good-
yeah.
But if you hear any kind of, that's Darling.
Oh, okay.
Because he's only, I think, 2.5 or 3 months.
Okay.
So he's here for daycare, and he's only been coming a
funny.
couple of times, so he's still settling in.
Gotcha.
But so here, what you're dealing with, I would say, is most likely just genetics.
Okay.
If it was new environment and he was a more kind of sound or resilient dog, he would have gotten over it. And then you'd see a little hints of it here and there.
Yeah.
But like when I moved my chair, and then of course when the train came in, that wasn't too bad. So obviously he's made big or much progress.
Right.
That part of him, unfortunately, we can't pull out.
Okay.
Okay, that's just a part of his genetic makeup.
Okay.
It's nothing good or bad. It's just it's like with humans. Some, especially now, anxiety I think is like much more prevalent. A lot of people deal with anxiety. It's just their genetics. And then there's people like myself who rarely get anxiety.
Yeah.
You know, so with dogs, I've seen the same thing. There are some dogs that are more inclined towards fear behaviors. Some dogs that are more inclined towards nervousness, or more inclined towards anxiety or aggression, or any mixture of. You know, and then I get other dogs that are just like, you could put them to the most stressful thing, and they're just like, what? Like
Yeah,
it's just
go
another day.
jump right
Yeah,
in.
exactly.
Okay.
So I'm assuming before booking this, you read up on how we train, the methods that we use. So we use e-collar and prong collar, which in the beginning can sound counterintuitive, right? Because you're like, well, we have a nervous dog, right? We have a flighty dog. How can this thing that is bad, so to speak, help them? Well, it depends on how you apply it. So e-collar and prong collar are still most commonly applied as punishers, okay? Are you familiar with like the 4 quadrants? Positive reinforcement?
Yeah.
Positive,
Okay.
negative.
Positive reinforcement, positive punishment, negative reinforcement, negative punishment, right? So the most common and widely accepted, of course, is positive reinforcement. It's a great method. Unfortunately, if the dog goes under too much stress, the food means nothing, right? Or if you get a dog that's just not food motivated, then you can't really do much.
We happen to have both
him.
with him. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's where these tools come into play. And in my opinion, it doesn't matter if the dog, how do you say, all the dogs that I train after 6 months are e-collar, prong collar. Okay. I know some trainers go like, well, I think this dog isn't a good candidate, this and that. I go, no, every dog, in my opinion, should be trained on remote collar, because it's the only tool that gives you off-leash control. Okay.
Right.
If you have food, if you're doing food-based training, let's say he was taking treats, sooner or later, there's going to be something in the world that's of greater value, right? So if he's chasing squirrels and you're like, hey, Jarling, get over here. I got a piece of chicken for you. He's like, I'll get that chicken tomorrow. I'm chasing squirrels today.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that problem. If we're using like a gentle leader, a prong collar, a slip chain, or any other kind of device that requires a leash, the moment you take the leash off, you no longer have any means of contact with the dog.
Right.
So then those have limitations.
Right.
Remote collar, on or off leash, food or no food, I have control over the dog. So that's why it's my go-to tool. I've built my entire career using this tool. It's the best in my opinion. I know if you go online and you do your own research and stuff, you'll hear things like, oh, it's barbaric, or you're shocking your dog, or electrocuting your dog. That's false. Are you guys familiar with TENS therapy?
No.
Have you guys ever been a chiropractor, physical therapist?
He has.
I have, yeah.
Did you ever have that machine that moves your muscles?
No.
No?
Not
Okay.
that, yeah.
So that machine, have you ever seen those ab workout commercials? Where it's like a machine that moves, or you watch, it's like work out your abs while you watch TV?
Yeah.
Yes, that's e-collar.
Okay.
It's just a miniaturized TENS unit. Okay.
it.
So if you go to a chiropractor, let's say you have like back pain, they would put these circles on your back with wires coming out of them, and they turn a machine on.
And that kind of.
Exactly, that moves the muscles. In other cases, they use it to break up scar tissue on muscles. They even have it now where it's a long needle to a wire, and they puncture through to
I've
make.
done the long needle thing where they puncture it and then your like muscle
Yes.
wiggles.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's an e-collar.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's electric but not electricity is how I describe it. It's a muscle contraction.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason why the tool gets a bad rap is way back when they were first created, they only had like 3 settings: low, medium, high. So the jumps were shocking, so to speak, because they were so great. Okay. They're much more refined now. The ones that I use have 127 settings. Okay. So 3 and 127 are the same. I just have 124 divisions now. Okay. The other thing is, in the dog training world, as I mentioned, positive only is the most accepted. And some of the positive only is completely anti-punishment based methods. So they use words like shock, pain, electrocution to deter their clientele from, of course, seeking trainers that use those tools, because no one wants to feel like they're shocking their dog or anything like that. And I go, well, that's incorrect, because if you understand the technology, even if you feel the technology, you're going to go, oh, that's just a miniaturized TENS unit. I even have a video underneath my consultation form where I'm comparing a TENS unit that I bought from Walgreens for like $150 and an e-collar, and it's the same thing. It's just the way it's delivered is differently. With TENS units, because it's massaging a muscle, or it's breaking up scar tissue, it has to work continuously for a period of time.
Right.
Whereas with e-collar, it's only happening when we press the button, okay?
Right.
So for example, I have 2 dogs here. One of them is Brody. Her last day is today. She leaves tomorrow. She's here for a 4-week board and train. And I'm gonna post a video of her on my YouTube. When you walk her outside, she just wants to run away.
Okay.
She's scared of the environment. She just wants to run away. You just see her tail talk. She's just dragging.
Okay.
Now, and in the first video that I haven't put it up yet, we're on day 19. We got all the conditioning down. I'm outside with her, and I have her under command. And I go, and I'm explaining her personality type. And I go, this is what happens when I give her freedom, and I release her. And you just see her go back to wanting to escape, okay? And then I go, and this is what happens when I get her back under control. And I tap her on the collar a couple times. She returns to me, she sits down, and she's calmer, okay? And she's a very extreme case. The moment she leaves, she's just in fear, flight, anxiety, okay? Is that when we put her into the obedience, she has to now focus on something else that then allows her to deal with the stress of the environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
That's
like
kind of what I assume.
like dogs can only. I've heard like dogs can only focus on one thing. So like if he's fearful of this, but then he gets the distraction of the e-collar, and then he knows, oh wait, I'm supposed to listen. Is kind of like our understanding of it,
To a
where
degree.
it's like, oh, like now I'm going to focus on this, even though that stimuli is going on.
So Aspen, who you just saw, okay, is a dog, reactive dog.
Okay.
You should have seen her day one.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. So they were lower on the collar, so you can see where she focused, right?
Yeah.
But you can still see where she had intent. So they were correcting her, and I had them bump it. She went to 75. She gave a vocalization, but I don't know if you noticed, she kind of did this at the end before she
Yeah.
started scratching.
Okay.
The reason why that's important is she saw Jarling and goes, okay, I want to be reactive. But because she's had classes, she's going, but I know something could happen. But we still don't want to leave it at this, right? It's better than what it was, but we still want to leave, we don't want to leave it at that. So we correct her, and then finally she goes, okay, he's none of my business right now, so I'm going to pretend that he's not even here. Okay. And then that's why when they left, she was just pulling towards the door because
Yeah.
she was uncomfortable with him.
Okay.
Okay. So she's thinking, okay, I can't attack him. I can't be reactive to him. So I'm going to pretend he's not there, and or now that I have the opportunity, escape from him. Exactly. And I bet you the moment she went outside, she was completely fine.
Wow.
Okay. But the collar is what took her attention off
Away
of
from
him.
him.
Yes. So it's all the same stuff. It's just what what is the collar taking the dog's attention away from?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, what's great about the collar is, like I said, we have 127 respective levels. Okay. I don't know what his number is going to be. It could be low. It could be very high. Okay. And that's usually what people struggle with. So Brody, for the first 2 weeks of her board and train, her number was 75, 80 because her stress levels were through the roof. So I have to do enough pressure to get through to everything, right?
Yeah.
Once we got those couple of weeks in, it was the middle of going into the third week, her number started to drop, where it went from 75, 80 to 50, and then down to 25, 35, which is where most dogs tend to reside on the level, okay? So now it's just a matter of what are her stress levels? So if I take her out on a walk, she can be at 35 and she's doing perfectly. But then like the other day I was walking her and then like the random car, like I think like the bumper was loose, so it was like rattling. And it like she jumped out of heel and like flipped around because it spooked her. I just continued walking. I tapped her and she came back and we just continued walking.
Okay.
You see that?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be things in the world that are going to catch her off guard.
Yeah.
But with the collar, I can disrupt the pattern and then get the dog to return back to what they were doing. But then what they realize is like, okay, this thing spooked me. I triggered. This happened. I went back to what I was doing, but nothing happened with the thing that spooked me.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's how we start to get the dog over the environmental things.
Got it.
She's 8 years old, so she's been doing this for 8 years. So 4 weeks is a blink of an eye, but
Yeah.
she's made huge strides. So now it's up to her parents when they pick her up tomorrow to continue to push her,
Right.
because emotionally it's hard.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen everything from the beginning, the middle, the end. So I know if I stick with it, I'm gonna get there. But if with her videos, like the first 2 were terrible.
Yeah.
Because she was just so stressed out.
Right,
And then
right.
I got her over the hump, and then finally when I did week 3, you could see the shift. Whereas most dogs, if I do a board and train, between 1 and 2 is the big shift.
Right.
Okay. So him.
See, now he's kind
Yeah.
of like, this is what he does, is like a perfect example of like the first time it went off, he's like, no, I don't know what that is. And then like the second time he kind of came over here while you were talking. And now he's kind of like, he once he's exposed to things, we've noticed that like
Yeah, he
he gets
completely,
a
like,
lot better.
Grades, he used to sprint the
Like,
other way.
Yeah, like
we,
on the
we got him to go on the
ground.
grade.
Now he just like, we just kind of like walked him over. So like slow exposure
Now he doesn't
really
care
helps
at
him.
all.
Now he doesn't
Yeah.
care at all. So like that's kind of where we're at with things where it's like then the obedience comes in to where like there's a few things that might set him off in the city to where we're like, oh, okay, he's like kind of wants to go home. But like that takes a while now. Like when we first got him, like it was an issue with what, you know, the train, like when we're under the train, like sometimes he's totally fine. Sometimes he's like, no, I'm just done. Like I want to go back. So that's where like we're kind of like, okay, like we need to redirect him. So he's like, that's nothing now, and I can hear that because I've heard it so many times, and now it doesn't bother me, but like this is a new place, so that's why he reacted. We're off of, like, we're 1 block over from Lake, and so we'll walk under the train sometimes. He used to not be able to go under it. There's some days where he's like, oh, that's the train coming, and we'll just kind of sprint, and then there's sometimes he kind of just ignores it, and he'll ignore it when he's with his other dog friend. We are friends with the German Shepherd, and when he's with the German Shepherd, does not matter what anything's going on, he's totally fine. So that kind of gives you context into where like I feel like this kind of training and what we talked about will go well because like he picks up on things pretty quickly and like once he's exposed, it'll take him a few times, but like he's pretty okay. But we just want obviously to have control over, you know, if there's something that we're like, hey, you need to settle or you need to, you know, stay with us and trust us. We want to get to that point. And then obviously to like have the heel and like a recall, you know, to where like, again, because I don't think, I mean, he's improved a lot.
Yeah, he's made big strides. He used to be like much more, like he'd be probably like pulling me out of the chair like when we first got him. So still young, still kind of, he's made huge strides, but we're kind of at that point where those strides have gotten less noticeable and we're trying to.
Is he 9 months, if I read that correctly?
14 months.
14 months.
He's actually 15 months today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so what you have is kind of like the leftover stuff. There's going to be some things, like for example, the train. You're probably going to continue with hits or misses. What I tend to do with the train is trying to make a dog heel under the train. It's not that you can't do it. It's that sometimes it can be difficult for the average dog owner because a lot of it comes to the handler's skill.
Okay.
So like I could walk him under the train like with e-collar and heel and stuff because I've been doing this for 15 years.
Yeah.
You know, usually what I tell clients to do is if you hear the train coming, I'll just come to a stop and then let it pass and then I'll continue the walk.
Okay.
It's generally easiest. What we don't want is the dog hears a train and they try to drag you away because I've had dogs escape their owners before. Okay, so what I like and what you pointed out earlier is that when he got spooked, he actually came over here. Okay, so instead of going, I'm going to try to run away from this, he said, I'm going to go to my owners, and that's what I teach the dogs to do.
Okay.
So like another example, similar example would be, I had a client in the South Loop. He was actually my neighbor. He took his beagle to the lakefront for like the Wednesday fireworks. And, you know, sitting down on the steps or whatever.
Right.
And he went like this to pet his dog. And then she was gone.
Oh.
And he looked, and she was like over by the Field Museum, like just like taking off on him.
Oh, wow.
So he, you know, he reached out so we could do some training. And what we did is we picked up a bunch of bottle rockets, and we had her on a long leash, and he was holding her on the long leash with the e-collar, and then we were setting off the bottle rockets. So when she tried to run away, we were correcting that until she would start running to him. So now if she heard a firework or a big loud pop, instead of running away,
She's going to be on his side.
she'd run to him. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I told him like, this is just so that instead of running away from you, she's actually instead choosing you as the safe point.
Right.
But then we're there with the dog. I'm not then trying to get them to do other stuff
Right.
until the thing is done, and then I go, okay, now we can leave or whatever. Okay.
Yeah. See, now
But
it's
this
like,
is observant. Yeah, this is
what
curiosity.
this?
Yeah.
What is that?
So,
And then before we go on, just like the flip side of that, like the confidence and the nervousness is one side of the coin, and the other big one is probably just like where there's zero of that when he sees other dogs, like it is very hard to handle him, like in a very positive way. Like he really just
Well,
wants
that's
to
why
sit.
when we were walking in, even you were like, "Oh, there's another dog here," and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
like."
and he doesn't pick up-
pulls like a
sure.
like a harness on this. So I was like, "Oh, he's not on the front. Like you have to grab him because he would have. If I had him,
he's
he
like-
will pull me into.
He's pretty
here.
strong for how
Yeah.
small he
And
is.
I can handle it, but like. I don't want to do that, you know, every time. I don't want to have to like wrap the leash, like we don't want to have to hold it like this every time we're around other dogs. Like we want him to be able to like still, you know, obviously be friendly and like, you know, be allowed to say hello. There's a lot of, he's our first dog, so like we're, you know, getting used to people on the street just being like, not even asking, can my dog say hello? And we need to have him under control because he's doing the like, I want to say hi.
So they just kind of incentivizes them to continue.
And then we have some instances where like the other owner doesn't want him to say hi, and we're totally okay with that, but we can't have him pulling towards the other dog. Like we're like, he's friendly, but like he just loves to play with other dogs. He loves to, you know, just say hi. And so we have to, you know, we want to be able to control him. You know, and now that it's warmer out, we're going for walks, stuff like that. Because it's not really, it's hard because he's not aggressive. He's super friendly, but like, you know, we don't want to be in a bad situation. And we also want him to, you know, listen to us in the same way where he comes to us for when he's scared. He needs to come to us before he says hello to another dog.
No, I get you.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
I was just saying he's gotten just like more stubborn about it too. Like he'll just start like, we'll be on a street and he'll lay on the ground because he knows like,
if he lays on the ground,
I don't want to like manhandle him in the middle of the street, but I've been kind of like picking him up by the harness, like let's go, like because he's learned quickly that it's like, oh, this will work. Like if I do this, like the other dog will come up to me and I'll get to say hi. Otherwise, we kind of take him to the side and we're like sit, stop, and Sarah's actually done pretty well. Like she gets him to sit down.
If I see a dog coming, you know, even coming, I'll just make him sit and wait.
Yeah, like, there's a lot of distance.
Then, and I'll make him wait, and then by the time the dog comes, he's already kind of like, oh, I'm waiting here. Sometimes he'll, you know, go towards, but I already have him like this, and so like he won't try to pull. But like if it's like someone coming around the corner, the dog comes right away. Once he knows that like, oh, I got the upper hand on you to pull towards, like he's not gonna sit and wait. So like the pre-doing it is fine. But like if we're too close, like it's like I can't get him to like sit, so I'm like pulling. And his favorite thing is to jump on his two hind legs because he knows it gets him closer. And he's done that ever since we've had him.
He knows like if he's jumping, we won't pull him back.
We're not going to pull him back because we obviously don't want him to fall on his back. So he's pretty smart when it comes to that.
So part of the issue there, and I see this all the time, and it's fine, is the harness.
Oh, yeah.
Because the harness actually works to the dog's advantage. Because their power is in that chest, right? So especially when you have it clipped in the back, they can do this and then push forward.
Oh, yeah.
And
we usually have it on the front.
Their center of gravity is lower than ours because ours are at our hips, which is why this happens.
Right.
And then when we do the front clip, it just deviates.
Oh, he's like this.
Yes.
Yeah. And we did have him on a prong.
We had it for like maybe 2 weeks or so, and he actually responded really well initially. Like, but then over time he kind of got acclimated to it, and we noticed like a little bit of his hair.
Kind of, I mean, we can't see it anymore. It just kind of like
it seemed like
left an indent.
Yeah, we tried putting it as high as possible. I mean, the type of training we did before wasn't really like we'd done our own research on it, and like we tried to do it the correct way. And then afterwards, we just came to the conclusion it'd be better to have a professional do it because
kind of show us.
If we are going to correct them, we want like as few corrections as possible. We want it to be like as humane as possible. Like we don't like needlessly hurting him if we don't know what we're doing. So there's good results on that. We didn't have to like yank him a lot or anything, but we just thought it'd be better to get a professional before he gets too acclimated to the prong.
Sure, yeah. And sometimes what can happen is prong is a great tool. Like I do use prongs. Like I have both Brody and Ajax for my 4 weeks boarding. My 4 week boarding trainers are here are on prong and e-collar. But Brody, because of her high flight response, and she's like an 80-pound dog, and then Ajax is a 100-pound Great Dane.
Oh wow.
And he's going to get bigger. He's only 9 months currently.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're both on prong e-collar.
Yeah.
But the e-collar does a bulk of the work. The prong is just there just in case, and it gives us just a little bit of extra leverage. Most dogs, like you saw Aspen here, was just on a remote collar.
Yeah.
Most dogs I train are mostly remote, unless I find the owner needs extra leverage.
Okay.
Like I had one client, she was like maybe 100 pounds, and she had a 140-pound Great Dane who was dog reactive, and she lived in Buckdown. So she could turn a corner dog, So I was like, you're gonna do prong and e-collar because you need it. Like you need all the leverage. So I've seen all that stuff before, so nothing new for me. The first thing that we do is we always teach heel, which is walking on the leash. It's usually a 2-part exercise. Okay, so 2 classes. The first class, you'd show up. I'm assuming you're wanting in-person training.
Probably.
We were, I think maybe discussing with you is kind of our first step of what you think. We were playing with the idea of daycare, like the 5-day board and train, or something like that. But if you suggest maybe other stuff where we're involved, or whatever it will be most effective, because we've already put like some money into this, and
we had them in positive reinforcement training, and like
they were
some like a behavior person.
And they were great.
They were great, but like
It
they
didn't
were
work for
very
him
like,
very much.
oh, if he doesn't want to do it, then he's not going to do it. And we're like, well, we have to take him outside. So it was that kind of thing. So we've already kind of like invested like a decent amount into him. So we're kind of also looking forward to like what is going to be the most effective, you know, where we're not, we don't think we need him like in like a month long, you know, program, but then again, we want to do what's needed. So that's kind of like
it's like a mix of like we're willing to spend like the money necessary to make him as good as possible, but like also, you know,
You've already spent money.
Yeah.
we
Trust me, I'm aware.
Yeah,
I've had
yeah.
clients come and they've spent like 10 grand on all these different trainers.
Yeah.
And then I come in, I'm like, oh, it's a couple grand. They're like, you sure? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'll get it done.
So again, like we're like kind of in the camp where like we almost want to see like, you know, your estimate of like, hey, like this is where I can get him with X amount of, you know, here. And then if we obviously would want to continue like, hey, you know, we want to be able to have him completely off leash, run on the beach and come back. And that requires X, you know, more to get him to that point, a lot of practice. Because we obviously are going to be the ones with him. So I feel like, I mean, I personally want to know, you know, the training of like having him heel because like when I walk with him, like he does pull me, you know, kind of thing. So I don't know, again, but then if it's something to where, you know, you have him for, you know, the 5 days or however long, where he, you know, comes back, it's a different dog and we just have to put in the work, then that works for us too. So we're kind of like flexible with it, but.
And also like whatever we choose, we just want to know what we can reasonably expect with his
no,
case.
for sure.
Because with our other training, it's just been like, well, we'll see how he's going.
Like,
We'll see,
I get you.
more times,
It's
like,
more,
maybe
yeah,
he
it's
might
more
get
kind of
here and
like,
we're like,
yeah,
shrug.
Oh, yeah, he'll
now
get
he's
better.
scared of lick mats,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
this is our 5th session, and we're
Yes.
like, okay.
There's going to be things that I will say that are going to be, like earlier when I said, there are going to be things that are going to spook them, right?
Right.
Like I can just say that for a fact.
Yeah.
Because genetically,
Right.
okay? But there's things that I can say that also, if you just do your work,
Yeah.
we're going to make progress as a fact.
Right,
Okay?
right.
So I don't do shoulder shrug answers. I do give, I would say 95% of the time, solid answers. There are some things when I'm dealing with like very extreme cases where I go, we'll see what happens,
Right,
unfortunately.
right.
You know, there's always progress. There's always progress.
Right.
But there's certain things that I go, especially if there's like a neurological issue, if the dog's have an aggression towards the owners, the biggest factor is always the humans. That is always the biggest factor. It's not the dog.
Right.
It's the humans.
Right.
Okay. Because let's say, for example, and this is a very, very common thing, if I have a dog that is very resilient to the collar, they're very tough to it, they could have a very high number. It could be 95. Okay.
Right.
And I explain everything. How to give the dog to the owner. I explain everything to them. They come back and they're going, well, I'm having this problem, I'm having this problem, I'm having this problem. Okay. What do you think the first question they ask is?
At what level you have the
Correct.
collar.
Oh, I'm at 45. I'm like, 45 is not 95. I just feel bad. And I go, I understand that, but I showed you the process and you saw everything before, and then not until 95 was the dog better. So that tells me 95 is the actual number. That's what I typically struggle with. Most dogs fall between 25 to 35, okay, on an average. Every now and then I get dogs that are super sensitive, so they're lower than that. And every now and then I get dogs that are higher than that, like Brody. Ajax is actually the Great Dane. He's 20-25, but when we're outside, and because he's also spooky of the train, and I have a video of him on my YouTube where you see it real time if you want an example.
Yeah.
I think I went up to like 45-50 before he started to hone in a lot more.
Okay.
And it's completely uncut, unedited. So if you look in the description, I go, the fun starts at 320.
Oh, yeah.
Because I wanted to show people I'm not doing anything here.
Right.
There's no camera action. This is completely uncut for 15 or 20 minutes, and I explain everything as I go out.
Yeah.
I walk through the process where I start low in the collar and I raise it up, and I'm just talking, and you just see it happen real time. Okay. I'm a very transparent person. Unfortunately, a lot of training now is like, it's obviously with editing and stuff, it can look like, oh, wow, you know, but I'm like, but all the stuff in the middle is the good stuff.
When you watch and you're like, I mean, there's videos online everywhere where you're like, you know, that in 2 minutes, this dog is like walking totally fine on the sidewalk. And you're like, what? Like,
Yeah. How?
Or like, I mean, I guess if you're really treat motivated, a lot of dogs will for food, you know, kind of listen as much as possible. But like, we don't want to, I mean, we don't have that problem with him, but like, you don't want to have to always, if I didn't bring my treat pouch, like the dog's not going to listen, you know, kind of thing. So there's a lot of things. And we're going back to, I mean, even his fear, I think we're okay with like, we know that like genetically he might be a little more fearful. We're fine with him, like when he gets scared, coming to us and sitting down. And if we're like out and sitting out at like an outdoor restaurant or something spooks him, the whole goal is like, you stay under our feet. Like, you stay under our feet, you're not going to run away. You're not in your flight or your flight mode where you're running away, which was what we experienced last summer, where like he was fine until he was like, I'm done, you know, kind of thing. And I think we're fine, again, with your outlook on this, we're fine with him being a little like, oh, that's the train, you know, kind of thing, as long as he's not, I want to leave, pulling away, you know, whatever.
The other thing is, if that does happen, so like the most common thing that happens to clients is like you could be at the park, it could be October, right? He's off leash or whatever, firework.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and I've had a handful of clients in 15 years where that's happened to them, and their dog took off and they were able to return them because of the collar. Okay. And they were in all cases max power, which makes sense, you know, because you know, we understand it as a firework. The dog just goes, that's a big loud boom, right? And it's survival mode, right? So protection mode, so the dog takes off. So it's not about obedience, right? So essentially what they're doing is they're overriding the dog's fear of running from the firework and making them more scared of running from them. So dogs like, because it's against instinct to run into danger, right? So if there's a burning building, you're not like, let me run in there and see what's going on, right? Unless there's an incentive, maybe your dog's in there, you know, a family member, a loved one, then you're gonna challenge yourself and go into that possibly, right? But other than that, like, we wouldn't do that. Same thing for the dog. So that's also why e-collars is my go-to tool, is because these things do happen. And unfortunately, there's no such thing as 100% guarantee, but it's the closest we can get to 100%, even in these kind of crazy situations.
And we don't anticipate, like, even, I mean, it would probably take, and he's still a puppy too, so I don't know if, you know, when he's 2, 3, 4 years old, he, you know, kind of calms down where he's not like all over the place. I don't think like we'll probably always kind of have him on leash. Like, I don't know if it's like, maybe if he does go, you know, to a dog park, you know, park or like whatever, but, you know, that's would be ideal, but like it's baby steps, you know, like he's comfortable with us now, so I think our main, you know, obedience is just like him listening and knowing that like he listens to us, and our, you know, when his fear comes, he comes to us, and then, you know, when other dogs are around, he needs permission to say hello. It's really
so I get this a lot when people come. Their ceilings are typically down here, right? But I go with the tools and how we train. Our ceiling is actually up here. And this happened with the client yesterday. It was their second class. They have a Frenchie. Dog's name is Franklin. And Franklin and their other Frenchie, Winston, were getting in the fights because Franklin was attacking Winston. And Winston is the previous Frenchie, so he's the older dog. And Franklin is also leash reactive, so he lunges and barks at dogs. So they had their first class last week. I saw them yesterday for their second class. And we were talking. And then they're like, Jesse, like, it's exactly what you said. We came in thinking like we're only going to get this much, but we can already see after the first class that we're going to go like way over here. Exactly.
And that's what we don't know too.
No,
like,
I get it. I get it. Unfortunately, because unfortunately, there are a lot more not good trainers out there than there are good trainers. And just because a trainer uses e-collar doesn't mean they're a good trainer. Okay, because a lot of trainers still use e-collar incorrectly. Okay, I've trained pretty much every other dog training facility in Chicago in the suburbs. I've trained their dogs again. Okay, I've had clients come from Cincinnati. There's one particular very popular dog training place over there, and they come over here and end up retraining the dog because they do like 4-week boot camps, 5-week boot camps. I have a client that comes for daycare boarding, and he had to do a 5-week boot camp just so his dog could board there because his dog is human aggressive. And then she came here, and then he was having problems with her still, so I ended up having to retrain her again anyways. You know, a lot of it is because so punishment-based training is they shape everything with food first. Sit, down, whatever, okay? Then they put the e-collar on, and they go, sit. Dog doesn't do it. I punish you, okay? And it's a very big gap because we go from you get treats to you get punished. And what we're missing is this middle part here, okay? Everything that I teach, I shape through the tool that I'm using. So if I'm using food, I'm shaping it with the food. If I'm using prong collar, I'm shaping it with the prong collar. If I'm using e-collar, I'm shaping it with the e-collar, okay? So have you ever pulled up and pushed down on Jarling's butt to make him sit before?
Yes.
Okay, right. So when you do that, you're putting pressure on the dog. Once it gives you what you want, you would relax, maybe some praise, maybe reward. That's pressure, okay? It's the same concept with prong and e-collar. We start low on the collar, I'm tapping, I'm giving him a little bit of guidance. The moment he sits, the collar turns off. Okay, and if I wanted to, I could reward him. So in the future, if I say sit and he doesn't do it and I tap on the collar, he's like, oh yeah, and he just sits. But he understands, he connects the dots, okay? So I can typically tell when a dog is not conditioned correctly because the owner will say something like, I'll tell my dog to go to place, and they'll go when I tell them. But then if they get off and I correct them, they run away. And I go, they're not conditioned correctly, because the collar should do what?
Correct the behavior, make them stay.
Yeah,
right?
go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So my dogs, if a dog were to get off of that object and I tapped them, they would go back.
Yeah.
So these dogs, they'll go there if you tell them.
Right.
So that tells me they've been trained with food,
Yeah,
but
to
then
go there.
punished, but they don't know to go back. So
Right.
then instead they run away. Okay, so that's why I ended up coming in and having to retrain them again, because I have to clear up that misinformation there.
Right.
Okay, so in terms of like how good he can get is just, depending on
don't know.
what you're wanting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh, I
Right.
know what I can get done.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
like he can be off leash trained.
You think so?
Yeah.
Like in this specific case, like you think that
Yeah.
that is
Yes, because
Okay.
so the only thing would be, I would tell you, you have an off-leash trained dog. My only concern would be if you're at the park and again,
It's a
there's a random
major-
firework.
yeah,
Exactly.
it's a
That
major
is
thing.
the shrug.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But it makes sense there's a
and we
shrug.
probably wouldn't put him in a situation like we're very like risk averse. So if he was off,
Sure.
he should be like
Yeah.
probably like some type of like open field
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like a beach or something.
Right,
And a long
right.
leash.
You got
maybe
Montrose Beach, you got the dog
yeah,
parks,
maybe
right?
a long
A
leash
long
in a
leash,
situation
just
like
in
that.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody, how do you say? And I'm like you, where I'd rather avoid the risk, right? But because I'm such a good trainer, in certain contexts, I'm like,
You're
okay, I can have it,
confident,
right?
yeah.
Now with Brody, for example, I wouldn't tell her owners like, take this dog off leash at the park.
Okay.
Right? I told them you might get there if you really dedicate your time and hone in on the training and practice,
Right.
because then their skills go up, right? So the dog is capable of it, right? But then because of her high level of fear of flight, I have to get the owners up here too, right?
Right.
But I would advise them, I go, because her fear of flight's so extreme, I wouldn't do it. If you are going to do it, it's going to be months down the line when you've really mastered the training and you go, okay, I'm confident enough now that if something happened,
Right.
pretty sure I can get it done, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So, but otherwise, if you want, because the other thing is, even though he's not going to be off leash at an unenclosed area,
Right.
if he's at the dog park and you're having a conversation and someone opens the gate and then he gets through because he's following another dog that's leaving, like stuff like that does happen, unfortunately, right? Now, you seem to be very like on top of it. So obviously you just recall your dog there. But what happens if you don't have recall there?
Right.
Right? Then you're like, hey, stop, like don't walk, let me,
Right.
Yeah,
I've seen
right.
that happen when I'm at
And
the
right
dog.
now it takes much less than that to kind of take his attention. And
Correct.
It's like
Yeah.
there's like outside in the world, very little line of communication between us and him currently.
Correct.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So,
And it's a like my parents' house are in the suburbs. I like his distractions and noises don't totally down. I mean, your parents do. They have a fenced yard. I do not. So a goal for his off leash would be we're on the patio. We have him off leash. We don't have to sit and because the stimuli around isn't as distracting. Yes, maybe he'll see a squirrel, but like that's something to where like. His training should be able to no,
Correct.
you're not running away, you're staying and you're placed and you're fine.
Correct.
And so that's kind of like, I feel like the off leash that we would love to have. Yes, going to a park or whatever, but we're again, not gonna put ourselves in that situation until we're 100% confident
Yeah.
he can do it. But, having that for, hey, you can sit and stay and we don't have to constantly be like, okay, we have to hold you when there's something is,
yeah.
ideal off leash, I guess, for us. But again, we're being, we don't know his threshold.
No, I get you.
You're
So,
thinking more.
I've seen, again, 15 years, right? Is you have a flighty dog, but I'm looking at him, I'm like, he is nowhere near Brody.
Okay.
Okay, and what I can do is I can send Tina the link. I'll end up having, I need to upload it and then I'll have her send it to you so you can see her.
The difference.
The difference.
Okay.
And that's what's going to show you like, oh yeah, this guy's like 20% of Brody or something like that. And so
Okay.
if she can make that much progress, then he can make even more progress.
Okay, okay.
Pending you do the homework, obviously.
Right.
So you learn the most from in person.
Okay.
Okay. The difference would be we get less done with in person with the shorter programs than like a 5-week daycare and train, which is I
Okay.
think what you're referring to.
Yeah.
So if we have a dog here for 5 days, either we call it a 1-week daycare and train, even though it's 5, or a 1-week board and train, which would be 7 days, we get the same amount of stuff done. So all commands are taught within the first 3 days. Sit, stay, down, come, place, heel. Okay. But if we only have them for 5 days, by the 3rd day, I've taught everything. But then only days 4 and 5 are we actually practicing everything, okay? So his progress would be shorter. If we have a dog longer, 10, 15, 20 days, we're taking those things that he learned that first week, and on the second week, we're already progressing towards off leash.
Right.
Okay, and I know it sounds crazy because you're like on day 6 he's already transitioned to off leash. I go, yes. That's it's e-collar training, like it's off leash training.
Right.
It's very quick when you know how to do it.
Yeah.
So just so you have you understand, the first week is what we call on leash. Okay, sit, stay, down, place, heel. We teach recall. It's the only command that's on the long leash.
And sorry, this is also like in environments and settings where there's more going on, or is that?
Depending on how long we have the dog.
Okay.
So for the first week, it's here. This is where all my training is done. Okay, because if I do his training with other distractions, well, then it's also distracting for you, but then it's a lot for the dog to have to deal with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The second week, we progress towards the long leash. I'm still in here, but I'm practicing all the commands. The third week is if we have a social dog. Now that training's being applied in the playpen with the other dogs. Okay, he's still got his leash on. The fourth week is he's completely off leash in a group of dogs doing the training. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that would be the kind of daycare board and train. That's how that layout looks. Unless the dog's antisocial, then we can't have them in the group of dogs.
Right.
But otherwise, dogs like him would be having the training done with the other dogs. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're slowly building things and making them more complicated.
Okay.
With an in-person training program, if you only do 6 classes, we're definitely going to get heel down. We're going to get recall down. Probably some kind of stationary command like place is the most common one. And then most likely covering how do we work them through nervousness?
Yeah.
How do we work them through the overexcitement and like, I want to go say hi to a dog? Okay, that I could say within 6 classes I can get done. Okay, now, will he be off leash ready for the recall? No.
Yeah.
That takes time to get done.
For sure.
But you will know how to get there.
Okay.
Okay, it's very simple. It's literally just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. With my daycare and board and trains, the first week is always the longest video. It's like a 2 to 3 hour video. Each video after that is shorter and shorter because all the learning is in week 1.
Right.
Then all I'm doing is I'm putting the dog through stages. We're practicing the same obedience. It's just in different stages. For the long leash in an empty environment, to a long leash in a busy environment with other dogs, to no leash in a busy environment with other dogs. You see that gradual progression.
Right.
Whereas with the humans, or when I'm working with the owners, you're the ones that are doing all that stuff. I'm teaching you how to train them. You then go home and you're practicing your training as you go on your walks, when you go to the park. You're practicing your recall when you go to, take him to the lakefront and you pop his long leash on and you let him chase squirrels, and then you practice a recall while he's chasing the squirrel. That's why it takes longer. Right. So I had a client, I trained her first dog, I came back, I trained her second dog. She said her first dog took her 6 months before she considered her to be off leash reliable.
Okay.
And I said, that makes complete sense because you can't practice every day. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you wake up and you're sick. Sometimes you're overwhelmed with work. Sometimes life happens. Sometimes you want to go to the park and it's raining, So those things that just happen naturally.
Right.
Sometimes you go to the park, you tell him to go, be a dog, and he's like, I don't want to be a dog because I'm stressed about the training, right? So now we got to fix that problem. So then you got to go back to the park repeatedly, and eventually he's like, what happens if I go and chase that squirrel today? Nothing. But when I call you, if you don't come, something's going to happen. But that's what the dog learns. And the dog goes, oh, I can be a dog, but when you say come, I just have to come back. And when you say heel, I have to walk with you and not pull you and sit when you stop. When you say go to my bed, go to place, I go there and I don't move until you give me permission, right? Once the dog learns the rules, all the stress starts to go down. So that's like with Brody. Her stress levels are through the roof because she's just a stressful dog. She's in a new environment she's never been in before, doing stressful training, right? So then not until the middle of the 3rd week that her levels start to come down, and I was able to communicate with her with the collar at the lower range because she wasn't so overwhelmed anymore, and that's with us working with her day in and day out over and over again.
Okay.
Whereas with you guys, you'd only be doing the training as you live your life with your dog, right? So that's also why it prolongs the process.
Yeah.
So within 6 classes, I could confidently say he's going to walk without pulling. You'll have the baseline for recall. Then it's just rinse and repeat until you get there.
Okay.
Most likely duration work, like place. It's the easiest one to teach. And then how do we work with the nervous dog? How do we correct them or keep them under control when there's like a dog walking by and we don't want them pulling or whatever? Okay. If we had more time, like 9 or 12 classes, then we start to go, well, I can either teach more obedience, or I can help you guys build a smaller number of commands to an off-leash level, okay? So all commands can be an off-leash trained. Sit, stay, down, come, place, heel, okay? Those are the 6 kind of family pet commands that I believe every dog should know. Heel, recall, and some kind of stationary command like place are the what I would call like the trifecta. Walk with me, come to me, don't move. Those 3 things alone will allow you to do a ton of stuff with your dog.
Yeah.
Okay. The only caveat would be to do place, you have to always have an object. Right. So if you go to a restaurant and you want them to lay still for a bit, you need an object.
Yeah.
Most people just use a towel.
Yeah, our friends have a dog with place, and she's really good at it. But it took them so long to get her to like truly place, but like she still gets distracted and stuff. But yeah, we're familiar with place, and they told us the same thing. Like, you guys should have taught place, and we're like, but he's not food motivated. Like, because they were able to lure her and say stay, and then they just kind of reward her when she stays.
Yeah.
But
yeah, with e-collar it's different. So like after I teach place for my board and trains or whatever here, after I'm done filming the lesson, I go to our activity room, I put them on place, and they do 2 hours.
oh wow.
Okay. They make mistakes, but I can correct them now.
Okay.
The problem with positive only is it's an incentivizer, right? Like it's do that again, which is great. But if the dog gets off, what's the motivation to not do that?
Yeah.
Right? So even if you withhold the treat, that's not a punishment. That's not a correction
Right.
for a dog.
Right.
But when I tap on the collar, they go, oh, they jump back and they go, okay, that's not acceptable.
Right.
So I have that immediate communication, and that's the one thing that positive only lacks.
Right. Right.
And if we think about dogs, dogs train each other with positive punishment, right? So like here, this is a dog bite, if you can see, okay? It's 10 stitches, it's from a Great Dane. He wasn't aggressive. He was a year old, never trained, unneutered, destroyed their house, chewed up everything, never been kenneled.
Okay.
And I had brought him, this happened on the first day of his board and train, brought him to my facility when I was in Logan Square, did the training with him right away. He did great. And then I went to go see if he would fit in my kennel, because I hadn't had a dog that big before. I only had the standard wire crate kennels, whereas now I have the galvanized steel 4x6 kennels. So I went to go load him in, and he freaked out because he was somewhere new. He just did something stressful, and he's never been made to go in the kennel before. So he looked up and he bit me.
Wow.
Okay, that's because he freaked out.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
But it stopped me from putting him in the kennel.
Right.
You see how that works?
Yeah.
So like for him with the Frenchie, right, when that incident happened, the way what my brain pictures is, they were approaching each other. If he's a little bit too much, right, the Frenchie goes, I don't like your energy, and then bites him on the nose as a correction.
Right. Yeah.
That's how that works.
Or like how they nip at each other, kind of as like, no, we were with my grandma has it was my uncle's dog, but has a husky, a Malamute husky, and she's 13 years old, and they were playing yesterday, and like you could tell he was trying to get her to play, and she wanted to play, but then when she was done, she just went, she didn't bite him, but she just kind of went like
nip at his ears.
like you could tell, like, and he actually.
A little impolite.
I don't think he
with other
needs
dogs, it
that, but
seems.
he needs those kinds of corrections because he's not around a lot of other dogs a lot, and so he needs to know, like, when she's kind of like moving away from you, like you need to know that as like social dog, how they know where it's like, hey, like someone, if someone walks away from you, you obviously don't go to some, like that kind of thing. And so her even giving that correction, he was like, oh, okay, I'll stay away. He tried again a few times, but it's those things, like you said, like those corrections.
What's nice about remote collar is that, like, let's say you're at the dog park and you see him harassing the dog, you can do that for the dog.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to refer to the e-collar as a bite on a button, right? When conditioned correctly, the dog should perceive it similarly to a dog bite because that's how they communicate.
Because they don't want it, but they know that's wrong.
So like here, like we have like 20 to 30-ish dogs here. Slower on the weekends. We have as many as 50 to 60, but it's just as quiet. We get the occasional bark, you get the occasional whine, but you go to other places and it's just all day, every day. It's just constant barking, right? The dogs they're playing. You'll see them playing.
Really?
And it's just quiet.
Wow.
Because we don't let them go above 5. Because anything 5 and above tends to lead to a scuffle at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is why our rate for things happening or incidents is very, very low because everything's so regulated. Okay. And not all the dogs here are trained on e-collar. Many of them are, which makes our lives easier. But there's many that aren't either. But what happens is it's a feedback loop. They just see the structure and they just fall into it. But if they see the chaos, then they just fall into chaos.
Yeah.
You see?
He loves the chaos too. Like he will insert himself. Like 2 dogs will be like not getting at it, but playing hard. He just loves to just be in the middle of it.
That's
he doesn't
funny.
even get involved, but he loves to just like let me put my body so I can sit and be.
For such like an otherwise like shy, like not super like in your face dog. It's kind of funny to see.
Yeah, it's funny to see him like even when like there's like a snarl or something from a dog, he'll back up a little bit, but he'll go right back and be like, oh, like,
Yeah.
but I want to say hi. Like,
Yeah.
he's just not.
Aloof.
Yeah, a little aloof to like little cues. And I
Which
don't
can
know,
be
that's-
dangerous,
Right,
right? And, but again, that's why with the e-collar, you can go, nope, you need to move from that dog, you know?
Because
Because
we brought him to the dog park a few times, and we're always kind of we look to see the environment, how the other dogs are kind of, interacting with each other before we're like, okay, go ahead. And
Yeah, like
he's
that-
normally totally fine, like plays, really nicely, but then you don't know who's coming in. So, we need him obviously on that recall to be like, oh, we don't.
To observe,
comfortable
you're
with
correct,
that kind
yeah,
of Dog around, and then if anything's happening, we would like him to.
yes,
come back.
and that's very wise.
Yeah.
Because usually most people go to the dog park and go, it's the dog park.
Yeah.
I've heard so many stories of dogs being attacked and like people just up and leaving with their dog after their dog attacked another person's dog. It's unfortunate. But everything that you're doing is wise. It's what I would recommend, and it's what's going to lower your risk for something happening to him because of another dog. Okay, so the pros and cons with like a board and train or daycare and train versus an in-person is.
So we live close, so if we were to do something, I think we would just opt for the daycare and train,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a full board. It's a little cheaper, and like we live like maybe 8 minutes away, so it just kind of makes sense for us.
Sure. So it's on my website. I think with the 5-day, you get like one follow-up because you get a video. So the video kind of replaces the lesson, and that's what I said. That was like 2 to 3 hours long. And then the follow-up's like to close the gap on anything that you don't pick up on. Okay. Now, if you did an in-person, you learn a ton more, for sure, because I'm training you to train him real time.
And we would be with you, not someone else.
Correct. Yeah, I do all my clients, and it's one-on-one, as you saw, like with Aspen. I don't do group classes. It's been on my radar, but if I did offer group classes, it would be for people who already completed programs. That's where group classes, in my opinion, are beneficial, because now you have the distraction of other dogs. But in the beginning, when you're trying to get all this harnessed, like you really don't want the other distractions, really, But everything I do for the most part is one-on-one. At a minimum, I would put them, if you're doing in person, a 6 class. It's once a week for an hour. It would be 2 on heel, 1 on recall, 1 on stationary control, which leaves us 2 as a variable. Okay. Now, chances are his nervousness is gonna, it's gonna show through the training. It's normal. Okay. But that's the benefit of the in-person, is if he gets nervous with you, I'm walking you through him being nervous and getting you to work him through it. Right. That's what, unfortunately, you would not get with like a daycare and train type program. Okay, you'll see me work him through it. It's very different than you actively working him through it in the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's so easy to watch a trainer and go like, this is how I'm doing it, and then the second that I have the leash,
You're doing
and
it
I have
completely
this
different.
leash, I feel like I don't know what I'm
Yes.
doing and I'm gonna mess it up. So
Yes.
I feel like for us, it's probably at least learning is huge, especially because we are okay with an e-collar, but like we need to know how to use it, and
Yeah.
that's like I want to physically
Yeah.
use it.
The other part would be like, let's say his number is higher. I do explain it. We always start low, we work our way up real time. Is you're still going to have, there's like I'll call it like a gap, where it's like, oh, his number's 90, like really,
Yeah.
But when you do it yourself and you end up there, it you kind of just work through that on your own.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Well, he will be more like, oh, he's supposed to be on that, and I'll try not to, but like where I'm like, oh, it's so high, like I feel bad, like
Yes.
kind of thing. I think that's just in my nature.
Yeah.
But I understand,
I could see,
the threshold, just because he also too, when he was on the prom, or like when he's pulling, forward, he feels no pain. I mean, I've stepped on his foot before, and he looks at me like
got a high.
he's high pain tolerant. So I could see him being at a high
Yeah,
number
it happens.
right off the bat. Just because not that we've been hurting him, but like when he has,
Just through what you observed.
he's kind
Yeah,
of like,
I've never
Well,
once heard him yell
he's
for
never
anything.
yelled.
Like,
Yeah, well, when you said he got bit in the nose and he just went like this, like in my head, I'm already going like, okay, like,
Yeah.
yes.
He didn't
He's like-
care at all.
And then he like went to go sniff the dog again, and the dog said, "Get away from me!" And that was the dog coming up to him. Like he didn't even, or something. But
Yeah.
he didn't even obviously like do anything. But it didn't affect, because we were worried like, oh
He
my
might
gosh,
be
is he going to be
afraid
now
of other
Afraid of dogs. That's very
now,
common, yeah.
like- And no, he was not.
Yeah, so when we see golden retrievers, like, because they're so sweet, people tend to think that they're weak or soft, right? But a lot of times they're resilient. They're like tough dogs.
Right.
I had another cream retriever that I trained. His name was Webster a few years ago, and his number when we started was 90, the first class, and then by the second class it dropped to 70. But that was his number. The rest of the program was 70. Yeah. And then they were like, "We don't get it, Jesse. Like he's so sweet. Like he's so loving." I'm like, "Yeah, but he's just tough.
Yeah.
You know, he can be a sweet dog and tough.
Yeah.
You know."
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's the other con about like a daycare train program is obviously I don't have a problem going where I need to.
Right.
And I explain it in the video. But when people get the dog and they then have to do it themselves, it's that emotional block.
The way we see it too is probably like, it's obvious it's not the best. You don't.
He rarely barks. So
Yeah, it's okay.
We
you're fine.
like you can do like a bunch of little corrections that do nothing or one that works.
Yes.
It's probably better to just do the one that works.
That's correct.
So he learns. You probably need to do less corrections overall.
Yes.
That's probably the ideal place where you don't have to do a lot of corrections at all.
That's
the dog
correct.
knows what he needs to do.
I always want to get my dogs to 0 corrections. Okay. But what happens is the owner sees the dog doing better. They're so much better than what they were. So they try to be nice and they go lower.
Yeah, I
and
know.
then they find themselves correcting a lot again.
Yeah.
You know, like my dogs have been off leash trained for 13 years. They're 15 now. If I know they're gonna be off leash, or if I'm gonna be somewhere there's gonna be a lot of stimuli, their collars will be on, just in case.
Right.
But I'm not doing anything,
Yeah.
right? Because dogs can come up off leash.
Right.
My dog, my pit bull Lexi hates fireworks, so it's happened to me before where I was on a walk and I got caught by a firework randomly, but I didn't have my e-collar because she wasn't gonna be off leash, and then I had to deal with her. She's like dragging me home because she was so scared. Like, you know, that stuff happens. But I tell everybody, the goal is always 0 corrections. It's just a matter of, are you going to be consistent with everything? Keep it where it's supposed to be, even 2 years later, right? So that the day like he tries something and you correct him, it's still the same number. And then he goes, "Oh yeah, that's right. That's why I don't do that."
Yeah.
You know, but if he's like, "Oh, you're at 40 today. We're not at 90 anymore." All of a sudden, they start to push the boundaries again. Okay. Dogs are constantly learning. You could buy a dog that's pre-trained, 100 grand or whatever, and then in a couple of weeks ruin the dog.
Right.
Because you're not doing exactly. That's why those dogs come with a lot of training, you know. Otherwise, they know that you'll just ruin them.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen with my boarding trains, where they had knew all this stuff, and the owner was like practicing all the things wrong, and I was like, "Uh-oh, well, we'll fix it, but I'm going to teach you how to fix it because unless you pay me for another boarding train, because the dog was great when they left here."
Yeah.
But yeah, minimum if you did in person would be 6. Okay. So with the 5-day daycare train, we would get sit, stay down, come, place, heel. We get everything done. But then you just get the video and the 1 hour of follow-up. With the 6 in-person classes, we get less stuff done, right? But you're doing it all yourself.
And how does the pricing work on the classes? Does it only come in packages of 6, or can you go one?
So for in person, we have 3, 6, 9, 12. For the daycare and boarding trains, it's 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, essentially, except the daycares are 5, 10, 15, 20. Whereas a board and train week would be a 7-day, day and night thing. The minimum I would do is 6. You could do 3, but the problem is, because this has happened before, where I give them the baseline and they go less than that, but it's not enough time to get everything done. And then they're trying to squeeze everything into 3 weeks, and then they walk out with less. Does that make? Because they're trying to do so much in such a short period of time.
Do you ever do like a mix of the daycare plus 3 sessions or something, like a 5?
You can. What I usually tell people is if you want to do the daycare and train, do the daycare and train, you have your video, you watch it, you practice it for a couple of weeks, and then you book your follow-up, okay? And then what people struggle with is recall, so I help with the recall stuff, okay? And then let's say you needed help advancing the training or something like that, you could buy 3 or what have you. That's completely fine because we're building off of where we left off, okay? We don't prorate programs though, okay? So if you did for example, 3 in-persons and then another 3 in-persons, you're paying the price for 3 and 3. Whereas if you do 6 up front, it's gonna be cheaper exactly. Same thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Same thing for the boarding trains and the daycare trains. If you do 5 and then did another 5, you're just paying for 5 again, okay? And you're getting what 5 entails. This is to incentivize people, of course, to book up front because especially going into this season, this is my busy season, okay? Is that I only take 4 daycare trains or boarding trains at a time because I don't want to overbook myself. So then we're being kind of pre-booked. So if you only book 5 days and go like, okay, we want to come back and do another 5, I'm like, well, I'm booked for the next 3 weeks. So then you have to come back when I have availability. Same thing with the in-person, right? Once my schedule fills up with the in-person, you could be like, oh, wow, we want to add another, 3 classes, 6 classes. And then, Tina's like, well, Jesse's booked up now. Now you have to come back and essentially wait in line again before you get back on the program. Whereas if you go, I want 6 or 9 classes up front, you see me for 6 weeks, you have me for that time slot. So we're not worried about, trying to come back and get on the calendar again, okay? If this was the winter time, I'd be like, you'd have a bunch more like leeway because it's slower. But now I've been getting, it's like one day to the next, it's like 5 consults. I'm like, okay, it's the season, okay?
I'd hate to be outside in the winter learning.
Yeah. And also planning. So I typically train at Oz Park during the not rainy season. So like we haven't moved quite yet because obviously with the rain and Oz Park floods, if you're not aware, and is super muddy for like a couple of days. So I'm just waiting for the rainy season to pass, and then we train out of Oz Park. Okay, now where we train, if we're doing in person, doesn't matter. Okay, whether we're here or we're outside, because the way that I teach, it's common sense stuff. I teach you how to figure it out so that when you're not with me, you can figure it out. Otherwise, if it's just like do this, do this, do this, and then something happens that catches you off guard, you're not going to learn. You're not going to know how to think through it. Right. That's what makes me a really good trainer. Is that I've seen all the aggression, all the anxiety, all the nervousness stuff, and I know how to work through it all. Okay. So then I go, it's up to you to now learn how to work through it all, because he's not my dog. I already know how to train a nervous dog. I've been doing this for 15 years. Right? This is your first dog, you said, right? So it's your first dog, and you have a nervous dog. So that's why I like the noises. Yeah.
And this is probably honestly as fearful as he really truly, like the only thing that he would probably do right now is probably because we're sitting here, he's fine. But if we were outside or something, he'd probably try to pull away.
Sure.
And but this is probably is about like fearful. Like he actually normally doesn't. He's been barking. We had our windows cleaned in our apartment building, like on the outside where the people were there. And this was kind of how he acted.
Sure.
Like he was just, I mean, he doesn't do anything, but you can tell he's definitely nervous. And like, this is probably about as worse as it is. Outside of just trying to like pull him out of the chair and want to leave, which happens outside. And I could totally see him being, and that's why we ask about like outside training and stuff, is I could totally see him like he is at home. He can sit and wait with his food, and I can walk in the other room, and he will, if I put him in a sit wait, he'll wait, and he's fine. So I could see him being totally fine here, training here for 5 days or whatever, and then like going outside and like not completely losing it, but like almost not starting from square one.
Yeah.
But like I could see him being like, oh, now he was at a 40 in here, totally listening fine, and now we got to bump it all the way up.
That's correct.
He doesn't,
Yeah, the assumption is if the dog's number is 40 in here, then outside you're most likely going to be higher than 40.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, a lot of it's common sense. Right. So once you understand how it works, it's just making sure that we're doing the exercises correctly.
Right.
Because that's what tends to screw people up.
Right.
Is they don't see what I'm doing to correct the thing, and then they do their own theory, and then that's how they're inevitably undoing the training, if that makes sense. And in the videos, like I'll even like say, which you don't want to do this, right? Because it's the most common thing I get. Yeah. And then they'll book a follow-up, and they're doing the thing that I said not to do in the video. So, it happens.
Right.
But yeah.
It's hard. It's challenging. I mean, you're obviously very comfortable with the training and stuff, and it'll take us a while, obviously, to get used to. Because again, when we even did the positive reinforcement, it was so difficult to have a treat, be like this, click the thing, and it's just a lot going on. So it'll take us, obviously to learn it, but we're committed.
Yeah, it's fairly simple because it's just you, the dog, you, the leash, the dog, the collar. Right. And then a lot of trainers really, I think, jam timing into people's minds, right? Your timing. Right. Your timing is not that important, at least not with training and how I train it. Because as long as the dog is within the mindset, you can still correct it. You don't have to correct at the exact correct moment. If, for example, he is, spooked and running like this, even if I correct him 10 seconds later, I'm still correcting the fear-flight response because he's still in the behavior. Where a lot of trainers like, oh, within a quarter, or within a second to 2 seconds after that, like the dog. So I'm like, no, You know, that's incorrect. So yeah, if you're doing the daycare and train 5 days, we're going to get all the base work foundation done, but there's going to be plenty of work after that, okay? Because it's just a week.
So what would your recommendation be just in our particular case?
For your
specific dog?
for your like, what would I recommend?
Yeah, so like this is with the assumptions like we are very committed and like we would like learning the stuff actually probably would be beneficial because it's not like we wouldn't be willing to put the time in or be very consistent with the training. We take them off 3 walks a day or whatever. Like we can like listen to it. But maybe the daycare and train just because of how he'll be here the whole day. Maybe that's like beneficial or whatever. Like maybe just what would be the most efficient for.
I would say.
Committed either way. Like we're gonna watch the videos. We're gonna do all as much as we can.
My recommendation for you, if you want to get the most out of, like, let's say a minimum investment, like you're testing the waters, I would suggest you do 6 in person.
Okay.
That would be more beneficial than a 5-day daycare and train. Even though he'd get more obedience in a 5-day daycare and train, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand how to work this dog, how to work him through nervousness. And you would only get that, unfortunately, in person. Yes, okay. And online, like, our prices are there. And then Latino, of course, will send you the pricing. So from earlier, we were like, well, we don't want the whole 9 yards, right? We're kind of seeing what we're going to get here. The minimum I'm recommending is 6, okay? If you go, Jesse seems very confident he's going to get a lot done with this dog, you could always do 9 or 12. Okay. Now, if Tina came back and said, like, hey, they're doing 12, that completely changes how I approach the program versus if I see you doing 6. Okay, because if I see you doing 12, I go, okay, these guys are committed, right? So then it's heel 2 classes, recall class, place a class, sit a class, sitting down a class, right? Because I go, that's 6 there. Now we have another 6 to start building towards the off-leash obedience, exactly. And everything is sequential, week by week. And if we're doing a longer program, like 12 or 9, towards the end, I start to space out classes quite a bit. Because now you need time to practice, make mistakes, learn how to fix those mistakes, or maybe you screw up and you come back and go, hey, this happened, we fix it, you go off and do some more homework, right? Yeah. So it's not that the dog is off leash by the end of the 12th week, it's we have 12 classes. And around class 9 or so is typically in a 12-week program where I tell clients, okay, now go and practice, come back when you're ready. There's some clients where I don't see them for like 2 seasons, because it might end in the fall. So they're like, we'll see you, back next when you're in Oz Park again, And they'll ask me questions in the interim. That's completely fine. Whereas, let's say if you did 9, I go, okay, 9. We're not going to get all 6 commands off leash, but we'll get a couple of commands off leash. So the difference between 9 and 12 is everything's off leash. Sit, stay down, come place heel. Okay. Well, not place because that's not realistic, but the other commands are. With the 9-week program, I go, we're going to get an off leash heel, an off leash recall, and some kind of off-leash stay, most likely like the sit position, to practice the off-leash obedience, okay? Whereas with the 6-week program, the only thing that you would be capable of getting the off-leash would be the recall, right? But it's not gonna be, again, within the 6 classes. It's gonna be after you complete the program, after you've practiced enough. Now, a very common question is, well, how do I know my dog is reliable for the recall? I always say because you're the one that does all the work. If I tell you, have you taken the leash off yet? And you say no, then I go, you're not ready. Okay, it's very intuitive. One day you just go, he's awesome, and you take the leash off, like that's and I can see like you're a little uncomfortable with that idea.
Like, oh, geez. Like I feel like again, it's like just the city, you just never know.
Yeah, and
I think that's where we're like, oh, maybe we won't even get to that, and that's maybe why we're being like more pessimistic about it.
No,
but,
for 100%.
Again, like if we practice somewhere in a field where it's like that's where we start and we do that for ever and ever and ever, and we're like, you know what, let's try it. I mean, I'd be happy to get there, obviously.
Yeah. Everybody's different, I had a client, her dog was dog reactive. She had did like a 2 or 3 week board and train, still had the problem. Okay. I get her call, and she did the consult and everything. She ended up doing a 9-week program because he already had baseline training. So I was like, we don't need to do everything over again, just some stuff. And at the end of the 9 classes, I told her, I said, your dog is off-leash reliable. I was like, I can see you've put in the work. And she's like, oh, Jesse, I'd never trust this dog off-leash because he was dog reactive. There's anxiety and trauma there. And then I used to do pack walks out of in Lincoln Park on Diversey and like Inner Lakeshore Drive there. I used to meet with clients on Saturday mornings and we'd go for a pack walk through Lakeview.
Yeah.
And then one day she showed up with her dog off leash. And I remember I was like, hey, he's like, you told me you would never do that. She's like, you know what, Jesse? It took me about, 2 or 3 months after the program finished that I was like, he's right. Like, this dog is awesome. Yeah. And then he also made friends. Wow. Like, because I had also showed her how to socialize him correctly, And she always started with the muzzle. And then he wasn't friends like with him, like with like every dog. Right. But he had a select 3 to 5 dogs he could play with, whereas before he had 0. And then she was also able to get a significant other who also had a dog. Because before he couldn't be around dogs, and then they moved in together,
It unlocks a lot for the dog, like potential-wise, it makes their life a lot better.
Oh yeah. No, when we do e-collar training, it's because I want the dog to have the best life possible, and with more control comes more freedom. Right. I get clients where they do the training with the dog. Like I had one in particular, they had to fly to Europe. The husband ended up getting a job in Europe because he was from Italy. And then she emailed me like, Jesse, we had to fly this dog, but they only do service dogs, this and that, because it's international. Yeah. And she's like, do you think, Ellie can do it? And I'm like, yeah. And I wrote the letter for her and everything like that. We had a class just to go over things, and they flew to Europe, no problem. But they did the homework. Right. They did the homework between when we did the program, finished the program, up until she emailed me saying, hey, I need this to be done. Right. And I was like, well, have you been doing the homework? She's like, yeah, every day we use our training. I go, great, you can do it. If she would have been like, kind of, we got lazy, this and that, I'm like, well, we can probably do it because now you've gone 6 months, 9 months of no training. And now we got to fix all that up for, a 12-hour, however long that flight was, But because she was doing it every day, and then when the moment came where it's like, I need the dog to be really obedient, the dog was obedient. That's the problem, is that people train the dog, forget about the training, and then go, oh, today we need you to do the thing that we did 6 months ago. Right? But when you're using it every day when you walk them, every day when you take them to the dog park, every day when you're watching TV, right. When you go to a restaurant, you bring them with, and then one day something comes up and you go, I actually really need you to do it. He's going to do it. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. So everything that we teach, I tell people use it at least once a day, because then sooner or later something's going to happen where it's like, today's the day. Right. But most people don't do that. Okay. They do the training, the dog learns how to do it, seasons go by, and they go, let's go to a restaurant, I'm going to have you do place. And the dog is like, yeah, and then the dog's terrible. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's what I would suggest. You're still more than welcome to do the 5-day daycare train if you'd like, but you would get more from your investment if you did just the 6-class in person, because you would learn so much more. There's also the collar. It's going to be the Dr. Black edition is what I recommend for him. It's the best collar there is. It's meant for a 70-pound dog and over. He's 60, 50? 65. Yeah. So he's right at that cusp. Perfectly fine to use. I could put on my 8-pound Chihuahua completely fine. It just means more output. Okay, so we get more from less. You do get 10% off if you get it through us. I don't care where you get it from, but I do care that you get the correct model, because sometimes people do their own research and then they come back going, hey Jesse, I bought this collar, it's supposed to be the same. I go, I'm not training with that. Okay, so you do want to make sure you just get the one that I recommend. Tina will send you the make and model, and then where you decide to get it from is completely up to you. Okay, otherwise the minimum is 6 in person. If you did a 5-day daycare and train, that's also fine. You would just get more out of the in-person. And of course, if you wanted to do longer, that's completely fine as well. If you did longer like daycare and trains, you still learn less because it's me doing the work for you, but you do get more follow-ups is the difference. Okay, and all that stuff's on my website. If you click on it, you'll see the columns. It'll say like 5-day daycare and train, 10-day daycare and train, what you get with it. Okay, just to give you an idea. Anything else?
Are we able to do obviously we don't know where he's at once he starts, regardless of what we did. Like if we did a 6 in person and then we started doing it and we're like, hey, we want to come back and do 3 more to learn. We're obviously able to do that.
Yeah.
And then
it's just not prorated.
Oh, okay, so it wouldn't be like we wouldn't get the 9 price. Yeah,
yes, exactly. Because Tina, so my schedule's done ahead of time. Right. So like if you do 6, you have a time slot for 6 weeks plus 1, just in case if you get sick. And then another client comes and they go, I want Saturday at 12. And if you have that time, then they get booked at the end of your time slot. Right. So if you turn around and go, I want 3 more, you may not, especially now, mainly because we're going into my busy season. Is that sometimes you come back to book more classes and there's 5 people in line, so now you have to get behind the 5 people, and that's so it's to incentivize one to do it up front, just because it makes scheduling my calendar so much easier. But then also, like when we're trying to onboard people, it's kind of unfair. It's like, okay, this time slot that was going to go to you is now going to this current client because they decided they wanted to extend.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then if we did like the week board and train, and then wanted like to do 3 classes to learn what you taught, is that possible to do?
Yeah.
Because like we would already have like the video and stuff, but then we would work with you just like, hey, this is the stuff we're uncomfortable with, and you kind of know where he's at.
No, I get you.
You're the only one training them. It's not like, hey, this is what we would need to do in the 3 classes for you guys to learn. That's possible as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only difference, the only reason why I say in person is what I'm picking up from you is I'm going, they would learn so much more from it in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Because with the 1 week board and train, like I'm still doing all the work because it's in the beginning. Once the dog is over the hump, like that's pretty much it. So with the in-person, if he's giving me what I think he's going to give us, and you're working him through it, like that is an invaluable skill. Yes.
Then you doing it and then us getting it. And then
Yes,
like,
because sooner or later,
why does it work?
this guy's gonna live to be what, 15, 16 years old. A lot can happen in 15 years. So I had it happen with a client. He was in Lincoln Park, and his dog came across a coyote. There's coyote in Lincoln Park. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. And he was with his wife, and his wife was completely anti-e-collar. And they were walking and talking, and then they looked, and the dog was nose to nose with the e-collar. Not the e-collar, with the coyote. And he recalled his dog. Dog turned on a dime, and he was like, I don't know what I would have done if my dog wouldn't have listened, and then that would have escalated. And then after that day, his wife was a believer. And she's like, I love the e-collar now, because she completely hated it. And the only reason the dog was e-collar trained was because the husband was like, well, I'm paying for it. I'm going to do it, But she never did any of the training. Okay. And then after that day, she kind of changed her mind. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So, but yeah, because of his temperament, because like if he was like, for example, human aggressive, I always tell people do it yourself. Okay. Dog reactivity I can get away with, because also with human aggressive, I got to think about my staff, right? With him, he's a sweet dog, so technically he could be trained anyway. It's just I know that you would get more benefit doing it yourself, even though you would get less obedience, you would get more experience. Okay. Anything else?
I don't think I have questions.
Okay. Last thing is that I can only take as far as you're willing to go. Okay. So if he ends up being a very tough dog and you're uncomfortable with going higher in the collar, then that's where we get stuck. And then people usually ask, when does the e-collar go away? In my book, when you need it, it doesn't. So anytime you'd be outside, if he'd be off leash, he'd be at a dog park, be at a restaurant, he's going to have the collar on. If he's a great dog inside the house, you don't need it. When people come over, maybe you need it for the first 15 minutes, and then once he simmers down, you take it off and he's fine the rest of the time, If you're doing the training correctly, you shouldn't always have to be pressing the button. At some point, you should hit, my dog is great. This thing is on just in case something happens, that it's out of my control. I have the ability to gain that control back. Otherwise, if you find yourself managing the dog and stuff, it's because we're doing something incorrectly. Okay? Anything else?
No, that all makes sense to me. Thanks.
Awesome. How'd you guys hear about us?
I did a lot of research and like different dog training after our first, trainer. They're fine, but we wanted to take it a different direction, so I looked into more balanced type training. I think on Google it just comes up pretty high up on the results.
Nice.
Just reading through the website and stuff, we like what we read.
Cool.
Looked at a couple different options, and it also helps that this is so close to us.
Sure. Yeah. And then as FYI, any dogs that we've trained, if they meet our minimum requirement, I believe it's 6 or 9 of in-person or a 2-week board and train. I think it's a 10-day daycare and train. They're welcome to board at any point. Okay, so they don't have to do regular daycare or anything like that. So like, let's say in the future you need to board him if you've met that minimum requirement. It's not a problem as long as his records are up to date. We have a fresh fecal, we're good. I get clients that come from St. Charles, Winnetka, Wilmette, Skokie, Evanston, Indiana. Like, I don't expect them to come once a week for daycare to be able to board their dogs here, So dogs that we've trained, as long as they met that minimum requirement, we're good. They can come at any time. Otherwise, if they haven't, they have to come to daycare once a week in order to use boarding services for the future or whatever. Yeah. But that's just FYI. So you can check with Tina too, and she can confirm what the minimum requirement is. And then she'll let you know. And then, if that is of any value to you, then that might be also an incentive to pick one program over the other. Okay. Otherwise, I don't anticipate any difficulty here. I've seen this a lot. And then if you want to see more about how I train, if you go to my YouTube channel, there's recent videos of me training dogs. Okay.
So actually, just as a final question, so yeah, just so like, you know, I have it in my head. So if we do the 6-day in person and we are very consistent with the training, like you think we'll be able to get to the point where we walk him without him lunging towards other dogs?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not worried about that.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. It's very quick.
We might be able to kind of calm him down better in situations and stuff like that.
You just have to be willing to do what he needs. Okay.
Yeah, if that's like assuming we do like your instruction and we're consistent about it, you think like, you know, we can make big strides in the 6?
I know it's just a small window of time, but it's because of the tool that we're using.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then how I use it. Like, not a lot of trainers train like I do. What's most common is what's called low-level e-collar, where you're training at ridiculously low levels. You're like at 5 or 8. And then it'll work with the trainer. But then when that's my son upstairs, sorry. When you're with the trainer, it'll work. But when you're not with the trainer, it doesn't work. So what happens is you're very low, then you're very high. You're very low, and you're very high. You're just drastically going up and down. Whereas I find a middle ground. I find a number that's low enough that the dog can think through it, but high enough that they respect it. Okay? And that's why I make quick progress. I also train in a way that, in my opinion, dogs instinctively understand, as opposed to most training is in a way that humans understand, and the dog has to learn to understand. Okay? They can only think so complexly, right? Whereas humans, we can think like this. So the way that I'm training is kind of dumbed down, but for the dog, like it's communication that they understand instinctively. So it's quick. Okay? Plus with e-collar, having the ability to match the dog is like the most valuable thing, you know? Because then if you press the collar at 90 and he presses the collar at 90, it's the same. With prong collar, his correction is firmer than your correction, right? He'll be better with him, but then not with you.
Yeah, no.
Run into that issue sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
He knows what he can get away
He
with.
knows, like, with me, he can pull. With him, he's a little bit less, but then sometimes he'll listen to me more or go to mom more, because I think he's more of like, I don't know.
He's more
just,
attached to Sarah.
yeah, he's definitely more to me, like if he's scared, he'll run to me, kind of thing. So
Sure.
when it comes to, training, it's like when you have 2 people who are committed, but 2 people who are equally, walking him, gonna be with him, it's always hard to say like who's the one in charge, but it goes with the e-collar, like you're saying.
To balance it out.
Both of us.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a helpful benefit. Didn't even think about that really.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I get clients, they'll be like 7 years old. They get a 120-pound German Shepherd.
I can't imagine that. Yeah.
It's very common.
A little 65-pound dog really gives us a
He's stocky. He looks
Yeah.
small, but his big front paws pull really hard.
Yeah, no, I've had dogs dislocate hips, break shoulders, break elbows, break wrists, break fingers,
Yeah.
And I'm like, why did you get, because people see the dog and they see pictures on Instagram and they see personality,
Yeah.
but then they don't envision like, well, what happens if I get this dog and they're not a good dog?
Yeah.
And then that's where the problem is,
Right, right.
so. Otherwise, I don't foresee there being an issue here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very confident in what we can get done. This, for me, is an easy case, so.
That's huge for us too, because we, again, have invested some money into like obviously doing the best for him. And our biggest fear was like, okay, we do all this, and like he's still not, the same kind of thing. And then you're like,
Well,
oh,
we literally kind of just went through that where
Yeah,
we
that's
paid
what-
money, and it felt like the outlook was just like, it's kind of that way. So,
Yeah,
like
no.
he's always going to be fearful,
Yeah, like
and
maybe
you kind
eventually-
of have to just live your life like that.
Yeah.
like, maybe eventually slow enough.
And like we understand that, like we said, we're okay with him. If he wants
There's a
to hide under
genetic
the chair,
component,
that's fine. But when it's other things, like we can't just.
Yeah,
like,
I want him to be able to live
Yeah.
in the world, at least like to the most of his
It's
potential.
confidence too, where
Yeah, what I tell people is we cannot make them unfearful,
Right.
But I can teach you how to have a fearful dog, and we can teach them how to handle the fear better. You said, so I have a friend of mine who struggles with anxiety. I've known him for like over 20 years, and he used to go to a therapist or a psychiatrist, whatever. He was on medication and stuff, and the medication he didn't like because how it made him feel and everything, and he just learned how to deal with it. He's like, I stopped going because it wasn't helping. I stopped taking the medication because I just didn't like it. It's like, I'd rather deal with the anxiety than feel the way I felt with the medications, It's kind of the same thing here, right? Except, unfortunately for you guys, him as a dog, he doesn't one day wake up proactively and go like, today's the last day, I'm scared of the train, but with you as his guides or his leaders, and then giving him instruction on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, that's what helps him, exactly.
work through the fear.
Yeah. Okay. Otherwise, it was a pleasure meeting you guys. If anything pops up, you let us know. If you have any questions you may have forgotten to ask, you can send them to Tina. If they pertain to me, she emails me. I send her back the answer. Think about it, mull it over. I'm going to send her my recommendations, but if you decide like, oh, this is what we want, whatever, you can email her. And then if you do decide to do it in person, if you send her your availability, that does help expedite the process a little bit, because that's exactly what she's going to ask you, is what's your availability. Exactly. Yeah.
And sorry, one more question. With the 6-day, is it like how spread out is it between the sessions?
For the in-person, once a week for an hour. Yeah. Unless something comes up and you have to reschedule, once a week for an hour. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
So I didn't know if it was like the day, each day or.
No. Yeah. We need at least a week to get practice in.
Got it.
So I get clients that want the answer like this, so they want to do 2 a week, and I go no, because you're not going to benefit from it. You can benefit more from a week. So okay, awesome. So you can take your mics, you can place them on the chair there. Yeah, people always forget.